December 22nd, 2020, about 10 a.m. Listen to the horrifying roar of sophisticated humans rushing off to their robotic duties. Anyway, last time we were here, I predicted that this would look even worse, despite the fact that we have gotten rain. We had several pretty decent days of rain, as a matter of fact, and despite this greening opportunity for the land, what I said seems to have come true. Whatever was budding and green and promising has been eaten back down, while the undesirable stuff, the taller dead fire fuel that was the whole purpose of the goats being here, remains. It's shorter, but in order to accomplish fire fuel being shorter, the goats have been unleashed on this land year-round. And this is December 22nd, 2020, about 10 a.m. And I was here roughly a month ago, and the goats were still here grazing, which means it's been pretty much a year of non-stop grazing on the land. And I predicted that despite the fact that we have finally reached rainy season, that this land would look terrible by the time I returned because of the goats being unleashed upon it. This is the opportunity for this land to have finally turned green. We actually got a couple of days, several days of pretty strong rain. It's not as much as we need considering the drought conditions we have faced, but in other areas, I'm actually seeing, nature is resilient. I'm actually seeing green popping up in other areas. But here, which is exactly what I predicted in the last video, I said that the goats would eat all the promising new shoots while leaving behind the remainder of the fire fuel. I also noticed that multiple generations of fire fuel were present at the same time. So it's not a winnable battle. Some of the fire fuel had been shortened and some was springing back up already right next to it, which means that in order to keep fire fuel short, you do have to graze all year round, which means that your ultimate solution is to constantly subject this land to goat grazing. You're not solving a problem unless the problem was figuring out how to get these goats free food. Not just free food, but to pay for goats to come eat land, vegetation on public land, and hurt the habitat, and steal from the wildlife, and leave poop everywhere, and turn what used to be vegetation into bare patches of soil. You go back into my old videos, because I've been observing this for more than a year, but I started videotaping this a year ago, and I said, look, nothing will grow back here, not even the invasive weeds. Some spots around the edges, yes, but unless the goal was to turn this into a parking lot for fear of vegetation turning to wildfire, then you didn't accomplish your goal. But if you want to remove life on Earth because you don't know how to deal with it and just reduce it to this instead, then yes, goats appear to be the way to go. And look at these tracks up here. Go back to my older videos and you'll see these in different stages. You see those lines there, those ruts? Just a remnant of it. That used to be pretty visible the whole way. And now you can see how it just kind of turns into all barrenness. Just constant exposure to these goats coming through here has reduced what used to be vegetation first into strips of barren soil, and now into just massive patches of barren soil surrounded by fire fuel. In the meantime, in the background, you hear people within their own yards with their leaf blowers getting up and doing their good duty of fighting against organic matter, fighting against leaves. We've all been trained so well what we're supposed to do, and that is to fight Earth. Look at this. Under the trees where the goats sought shade during the hot months that they were here grazing, and also because they were eating the leaves of the lower branches, this has really been destroyed. Should I talk about erosion? I mean, you know, this is slippery to walk on. When I first would come and enjoy hiking here, there weren't all these loose pebbles and rocks and gravel, but the root system has been removed, the vegetation has been removed, constant trampling has upturned the soil, and now this is just crumbling ground. Of course, while I'm out here walking, I don't have the old video in front of me, but the native plant that I found was here. And I mean, I'll keep looking, but this looks so bad. I can tell. I mean, it doesn't seem that anything has survived after yet another exposure to the goats. Goat poop, invasive fire fuel, compacted bare soil. Well done, goats. I'm not seeing anything that seems to have survived the last round of goat grazing. And I don't even know that they're gone. They might just be on the other side of the hill. I mean, they are here year round. Maybe a 1 month break here and there when they go and destroy land somewhere else. It's really scary. I read an article that they can't keep up with the demand. Everyone has bought into this so thoroughly. Everyone's so scared of earth and vegetation. They just can't wait to bring in goats. Get rid of all the plants. Look how bad this soil is. It's always good to look back with the sun behind me and zoom in on what you can still see are scars in the land from the goat trails. I can't find that native plant. I was hoping it was one that goats don't like, But there don't seem to be any plants here that goats don't like, except for the ones they were supposed to have gotten rid of. Well, I could film forever. I'll keep searching. You're gonna have to just trust me that I'm trying to find that plant, but I've already walked past where I found it, so I'm confident that it's not here anymore. There are two sounds coming from over here that say everything about modern human race. One sound is the roar of the freeway, of the people who own homes off to do their robotic duties at their robotic jobs. The other sound is a closer sound, and that is the sound of leaf blowers polluting the air with their noise pollution and gas-powered engines to blow leaves at the homes of the people who are not present because they are off to do their robotic duties. Our disconnection from this earth leads to a constant assault on the earth. I'll just turn this back on for a minute. I've come through all here. I've been searching for that silver lupin. We were hoping that the goats might not eat it because of phytotoxins or anything that might possibly protect it. It is absolutely gone. Everything is gone except for these thick brush stems, but those have been stripped bare and haven't been allowed to grow higher than that. And I'm just showing once again the extent of destruction on this ground, the extent of erosion taking place. What was once a succinct little path here the goats used, and when you got 400 goats, that means they're not going to be in a straight line, and then you repeat that over and over and over again, and now you just have an eroding hillside where at the top you don't have any vegetation growing anymore. It's really a nice example of what grazing does to the ground in terms of intensity. Most intense traffic of the livestock right here, and you can see some vegetation down there, but unfortunately mostly what you see is the invasive fire fuel that they left behind. And then you get into the hills, you get into the steep areas that is separated by a creek that they didn't go, and you have trees remaining. I know I've shown all this before. I just can't get over how terrible it looks, and that we're clapping for this. The intelligent, superior species in charge of the planet. And this is what we have deemed to be a good thing. So good that we actually pay for it. I guess I should explain for people who haven't watched the earlier videos what this is that's surviving. This is coyote brush, and despite our harsh year, it's still managing to produce some greens. Unfortunately, it's subjected to the goats, so most of these branches are bare. This is new stuff coming up. But with the exception of the coyote brush, the only thing green you have are the trees. And the bottom of the trees have been stripped by the goats. Which is to say, I could make an argument that if the goats were able to, even the trees would be stripped, and we would have nothing green. I don't think coyote brush is particularly good forage, which is why it's grazed on minimally, but grazed on enough to control it if you have wildlife. But we've gotten rid of all the wildlife and are instead now subjecting the land to hordes of livestock that obviously don't have a positive impact on the land. Oh, I'm so sorry. Look. Look. A couple of green shoots just popped up. And what's really sad about that is that this is an obvious indication that the absence of the goats is the only chance for these to grow and get tall. I saw some green starting last time I was here, and it's gone. It's gone. The goats took it while continuing to leave what they were here for in the first place. Just incredible. The two sounds of modern humanity: the roar of the traffic of the homeowners driving in their noise polluting, air polluting cars to their mindless, meaningless jobs, and the noise pollution of the landscapers that they hire to come and do whatever it is that they do at their homes while they're off at their mindless jobs. And I say do whatever they do because no one knows what they do. They're off at their jobs. And we're so used to noise pollution, no one even says anything about it. It is a constant assault on the earth, a constant assault on peace and quiet, a constant assault on nature. All resulting from our disconnection and loss of purpose. I gotta get this shot. Bare branches, invasive plant fire fuel, the result of goat grazing, and the sounds of humans and their leaf blowers battling against the earth in their own yards while sending goats out to destroy habitat outside of their yards. Just listen to the beautiful sound of progress, sophistication, the sound of civilization. Just look at the variety of invasives right in my immediate proximity. With the wonderful soundtrack of human leaf blowers. We're just fighting Earth on all fronts. What we're looking at here are multiple generations of fire fuel. Some of the older stuff from earlier rounds of goat grazing that were simply trampled, and newer stuff and stuff that just didn't get trampled or grazed on, that's still quite tall. And as you look over this, the only thing maintaining any green is the coyote brush and the trees, the tops of the trees, the sections of the trees that the goats couldn't reach. So it seems that goats don't like coyote brush, which would make it the only native plant that the goats didn't destroy, while failing to get rid of what they were sent here to get rid of. And again, for those of you who are noticing that there's some green on the ground, you know how fast this sprouts up after a rain. This is brand new. And it's only here because the goats aren't here at this moment. This had started last time I was here, and it got wiped out because the goats were present, as I predicted would happen. There's goat poop from the previous round. Ever present. Ever present. Thank you so much for getting rid of the fire fuel. Freaking ridiculous. Let's go back up the hill. These poor things, that's not coyote brush. And maybe that's why it's in such poor state. This is also coastal live oak, which is what this bigger guy is. And as I said earlier, you can see that the bottoms get fed upon by the goats. I have plenty of footage of it happening if you have any doubts. But the fact that they eat those leaves, you know, kind of explains why these are in such bad state, because here you have it right down at the ground level. And the only thing still sprouting on this poor thing are the ones deep inside and brand new. So once again, the only thing that the goats didn't really just abuse the hell out of is the coyote brush. There's more live oak trying to grow. You know, that's a native plant trying to do what supposedly is the goal here, to allow native plants to regain a foothold here, but instead the goats get to have a free meal and hurt what few native plants we have attempting to make a comeback. And it's not just the grazing, it's not just the eating of the leaves. You look back at some of my old footage and these goats actually break these things, especially if there's any branches up high and they're trying to get to the green. They will literally get on their hind legs and then lean forward with their bodies and break the branches down. I can pretty much stop anytime I want to, bend down, and there will be goat poop. I'm bending down really quick because there's a hint of green stuff growing here that isn't grass. Unless I'm mistaken, that is stork's bill, which is a type of fillery. I mean, you see the goat poop right next to it. This is not a native plant, African plant in its origin. Again, brand new, just barely sprouting up. besides fillery, sheep sorrel is another one that pops up where there's urban grazing. And once again, that's what I'm seeing here. I haven't identified any native plants rebounding thanks to being subjected to goat grazing. I still don't understand how people think that can possibly work. I see this crap, this wall barley, and I can't help but think of it going up my dog's nostril or down his ear, just like so many of these invasive plants do, when we could have this one instead. Just for good measure, I am passing back through this zone one more time, and as you can see, I've been kneeling down close enough to identify the sheep sorrel and the fillery. The silver lupin, the beautiful silver lupin, sadly is gone. Can't say for a fact, obviously, but it's hard not to look at the same branches that I witnessed the goats leaning on and chewing the leaves off of, and not wonder if that ultimately had anything to do with them finally breaking off. Look at the poor land where these goats were. And as I always say, if you ever doubt me, just pan to the ground. You'll always find goat poop. But in this case, what I'm trying to point out is the sad state of the barren soil. You got almost nothing except for one or two patches of non-native plants. Look at how terrible this is. This is shocking. If I'm not mistaken, this was a smaller patch of bare soil that I would show and revisit in my videos. And it also, like sadly many other spots here, has just expanded into broad barren soil. Once again, let me point out that in the middle here, in the most intense areas of grazing, it's just dead soil. You know, there's nothing happening underneath the ground. There's no microbiotic organisms, there's no root structure, there's nothing trying to take place. And as you move towards the edges, you have a couple of sprouts of invasive plants, like a, what is that, a Malta star thistle. It's just so obviously not in favor of the native plants. I found one again, as I head away from the complete dead zone and over to here where there's still some of the invasive plants, the taller plants remaining, I've got common sheep sorrel, and I'll be fair, I'll show one native plant. That's a early growing California poppy, which is a surprisingly resilient native plant. But so what? Everything I showed you today is null and void because I found one plant, one native plant, which as soon as you unleash the goats back here will be eaten. You'll just keep repeating this stupid process until everything looks like this. Here's where the goat hooves sunk in during the last rain. Goats grazing during the rainy season. Again, here's an issue. Just getting down this hill, even in decent outdoor off-trail running shoes, is a matter of falling and sliding because everything is eroded. So much of this where plants used to be is just trampled into nothing now. So this story just gets sadder and sadder. I was sitting here a little bit further away from the main grazing area, but they definitely made it over to here, right up to the edge of the beautiful wild area. And sure enough, here we have goat poop, and here we have the invasive plants eaten down in various heights. But this new stuff coming up in the exact same spot, I messaged a friend of mine because I was having trouble identifying what I called grass, but this is what the beginnings of those invasive grasses are. This isn't good grass. This is just what this other crap looks like when it's starting out. So you have the old fire fuel, you have the goat poop, and you have the brand new fire fuel being fueled by goat poop. And here, what do we have? Broadleaf fillery, the other one that I said pretty much always comes along with goat poop. Really like to know how you can conclude from that example that goat grazing is accomplishing anything other than feeding livestock. Sure enough, when I pulled out my dog, fillery seed. Climbing an eroded hill where I see nothing but invasive plants. I just got to ask, how exactly does anyone expect the native plants to just pop back without assistance? The goats trampling the land is not assistance. If it's assistance for anything, it's assistance for invasives that respond better to disturbance.